Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Palmera Pickleball Show. I'm your host, Geoff Bourgeois, CEO and founder at Palmera Pickleball. With me today is Chris Bouza from pickleballpros.com. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, Geoff. Thanks for having me.
Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk with Chris about his business, pickleballpros.com. I understand Zane Navratil is partnered with him on that. It's a cool business. But more than that, we want to talk with Chris about the journey. The journey of what? Of being a pickleball entrepreneur, of what it means to step out from a passion, something that you do perhaps as a fun hobby, actually take the game so seriously that you're going to invest in it, not just capital, but your precious time as well. And what does that mean? I'm going through it myself with Palmera Pickleball. Chris is going through it as well. And it's an interesting insight into the industry and into the sport of pickleball. So we want to talk to him about that as well. But for starters, Chris, if somebody wanted to learn more about pickleballpros.com, give us an overview of the business, how you got into it, and what you do. What's the outcome you deliver? What's the value that you bring into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Pickleball Pros is primarily an operation that likes to marry pickleball pros and your local facility in your local community. So I started this idea probably 10 months ago. I've had pickleballpros.com parked for a couple of years, not really sure what to do with it while still having a full-time job in the automotive industry. I've got 20 years of business experience on the automotive side of things, mainly helping dealerships realize a higher ROI for their efforts, whether it be through advertising or in-store processes. And was given the opportunity to work with a pickleball club through some of my advertising efforts. That came after 2 years of starting playing myself and just falling in love with the game. Quick short story on that. The first time I ever played, I had a nice older lady named Nancy put her arm around me and walk me around the court exactly like you would want, physically and metaphorically, put her arm around me and took me around for a day. Fell in love with it so much that I rented a ball machine that afternoon and hit balls for 3 hours because I wasn't ready to be as bad as I was at that first attempt. So that working then, like I said, with that advertising agency with a pickleball facility led me to creating partnerships with different brands within pickleball and really getting excited about what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. Not that automotive advertising isn't fun and there aren't wins and challenges just the same, but this was a true, like you said, taking a passion of yours that you do kind of for fun or that's something that you love and trying to turn that into what you do day to day. Given the opportunity to meet, like you mentioned, my partner Zane Navratil at that time a year ago, really saw the opportunity to want to bring those pros locally. Here in Omaha, you can imagine we don't have pros coming through town regularly, right? There's no events here. We've got some strong players in the area, but nobody on the professional level. And working with Zane, having him come through Omaha, finding a community of people that were really interested in what we were putting out. There's a price tag certainly to a pickleball clinic when you bring a pro to a remote town. You got to take them off the map for a couple of days. You've got to pay them for their time and then pay facilities, of course. So the price isn't necessarily always too cheap, but we believe it to be fair in that, you'd have to pay $1,000 to travel to another town to take a clinic with a pro versus we bring them right here to your backyard. And really bring value. And somebody like Zane specifically, I'm very specific on the coaches that we try to work with and the pros we try to work with, because we want that really family touch, feel, and atmosphere on the court, right? Pickleball is such a sport that brings people together more so than any other that I've ever been a part of. We're complimenting our opponents constantly, right? While we're degrading ourselves maybe in our mind, we're helping the other team feel good throughout the match, just naturally, because that's part of the game. And that's what we try to bring. We try to bring those pros out to your local facility, allow you to get better while learning from someone who's fun and engaging and that's been there and seen it and done it and gotten to a very high level. And that no matter how old you are, if you're 65 years old, you can get better if you want to. You just have to put in the time and the effort.
That's a great point. And Zane is a pickleball entrepreneur himself. I mean, my understanding is he used to be an accountant at maybe one of the big four accounting firms, and then he he goes full time as a pickleball pro athlete.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's got a lot of followers on YouTube. I think he's Pro XR sponsored. He's got his own signature paddle with Pro XR. I bought 3 of them and used to be that was my go-to paddle for part of my player development journey. And Zane also was just recently elected to serve as president of the UPA Pro Player Committee, was he not?
Yeah, by the players themselves.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it just speaks to who he is, and that's part of what drew me to him. And really, as I tell him, kind of hitching my wagon to Zane, is that the intention when I spoke to him, I actually put him up for some business in a prior engagement, and he came in with a quote that was fairly lower than his competition, and was almost turned away for that purpose. And I went up to him on a personal level and just said, "Hey, just so you know, you're potentially undercharging for your services." And his response to me was, "Well, I don't necessarily look at it that way. I look at it, I want to charge what I believe something to be fair and for what it's worth and not overcharge. I'm not trying to squeeze every dime out of everything that I'm doing, but I just really enjoy what I'm doing and I'd like to do it for a fair price." And that attitude goes through everything that he does. And you can see that by, you hear his recaps of all the MLP events and the
Yeah.
response to from the crowd out in the world, basically his audience saying, "We really appreciate you giving us this real transparent feel from the pro position." And that's what he focuses on. And he brings those to his clinics. And we go out and search for other professionals to take part in our clinics who have that same kind of mindset.
Yeah. So let's double click on clinics for a little bit. It's an interesting thing. I've seen, for instance, being based here in Nicaragua, that we've had pro players come down and do clinics here. Ben Johns and Deckel Bar creating pickleball getaways as a vacation pickleball tourism business is really predicated on an appetite for clinics, led by pro players. This week in Nicaragua, Tanner Tomasi is doing a clinic in San Juan del Sur, and I think he has another couple days that he's going to be doing it up at a padel club in Nicaragua, or in Managua, the capital city of Nicaragua. And it's interesting talking just last week with a fellow pickleball player who's taken it up. He's hooked. He plays competitive tournaments. I think he's got his UPA referee certification, and he's in around the 4.0 level. He's definitely a tournament scrappy player. He's a 4.0 level, and he wanted to go to the clinic that Tanner's putting on this week in Nicaragua, except he said, I need to know that I'm learning new things, because I went to the one last year and I learned some great stuff, but if I go and pay this rate again, I want to make sure that I'm learning stuff that's appropriate for my skill level. And it's an issue, of course, just, with all this explosive growth in the player adoption globally, right? That there's an appetite where people are coming in, they're discovering the sport, they're having fun with it, but now it's time to start learning how to, think about the game and understand it not as a game of checkers, but as a game of chess, and what is a proper ready stance, and help me understand how to move through the transition zone. It's not a no man's land in doubles, so how do you properly move through that? Some of those basics, getting a foundation. My point is, with so many new players coming in, there's obviously a high demand for clinics that are just going to help give people the fundamentals, the foundation. But then the marketplace evolves when a lot of these players have been through 1 or 2, 3 clinics, where their appetite shifts and they're looking for higher level training, something that's going to get them to go from 4.0 to 4.5. How have you dealt with that in your business, or is that a problem that you've tackled yet or not? Or what are your thoughts on that in terms of, you're offering clinics, but when you go to target an audience, do you have a specific audience that you're targeting? Any thoughts that you have on that would be great.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head with that being an immense challenge that we face every single time we go to market with a clinic, with a new facility, for sure. So a bit of history, certainly the first one that I ever really put on was bringing Zane here to Omaha, where then He saw the way we put on the clinic, and that's what kind of led to our partnership, right? He saw what I was doing, how well I operated it from his eyes as the pro of the clinic, and asked if I wanted to continue doing more. And so that's where we got to where we are today. But that first event, I really thought that the crowd around town that I tend to play with, I'm about a 3.8 aspiring 4.0, trying to get to 4.5 myself, traditionally play in private games with those 4.0 or higher. And I thought that would be my audience, bringing in a professional and getting that 4.25, 4.5 that really want to push to the next level and use a professional's eye and ear to get them there. And it was wildly the opposite, to be honest. My first event out of 24 people, I say this with love, the majority of my participants were over 60 and female, because they know Zane, they love Zane. Zane has an attitude and just an aura about him that seems to attract the ladies that want to gab his ear off as he's moving from practice court to center court at an MLP event. And he's more than happy to talk to them. And that's why he builds that kind of rapport with a similar audience. But it was primarily not what I thought it would be. And at that point, I had all different levels coming to one single 5-hour clinic. And so Zane was able to maneuver, and we constantly, on the court, I'm looking at how the drills are going, and we're trying to move people around to get them like-minded. I already had all of their own given ratings tracked, and I set them on starting courts so that they'd be with similar levels. But even then, you can only go so far as what the data that you're provided, right, by the participant. So there were times where I'd have somebody come over and say, hey, can I get moved off this court? Can I get moved around? My drilling partner isn't quite up to my level. And I want everyone to have an amazing experience. That's the first thing. You're trading your valuable money for time on our court for a result that makes you happy when you leave, right? It's all about how you make people feel, not exactly the nuts and bolts of everything. So worked very hard to do that, but even took that feedback in from some of my players that they said, a lot of the things I really felt like could have been better had we been on a specific court, or we did better in dividing clinics, or was level specific that I signed up for. And so we've had to tailor that over the year of really trial and error. And the difficulty with even that is it's market dependent and it's participant sign up dependent. So we can go to I just was on a conversation with a gentleman from Mishawaka, Indiana today about bringing a Zane to his club. And we've kind of shifted our model a little bit. Rather than to say, hello, sir, Mr. Club owner, can we rent courts from your facility? We'll go out and bring all the players to the table. We say, let's work out a price that and a rate that we can pay this pro to keep them happy and get them there for a decent amount of time, maybe 8 court hours for a full day. And then we work together to create kind of that menu of clinic options or things we're going to do throughout the day, because they know their specific membership and their local area and their player base better than we ever could. And so if I go to them and they say, we have 50% of our members are 3.0s, well, we're going to have a 3.0 session, right? That's just the nature of the beast. While I would never turn anyone away, I don't feel I feel like a professional at Zane's level can really take a 4.0, a 4.5 and elevate them quickly because they already understand the very basics, and we can make leaps and bounds with them. Whereas we can bring in a 3.0 to 3.5 and they can have a great time and they can also level up equally. But I feel like they could find other ways to go from 3.0 to 3.5 that isn't on the court with a Zane Navratil, with a Mari Humberg, with a Jack Monroe. But through YouTube, through their own local coaches, they could get themselves to that point where then maybe they plateau and they need that injection from a full-time, top level pro. So it's a big challenge. We're constantly working through it. I'll never claim I have it figured out, because we can go to one clinic here on a Monday and it can work perfectly at a 3.0 to 5.0 class, a 3.5 to 4, a 4.0 plus. But in the next market, we may need to start at the 4.0 level and above, and we'll fill those out and sell those out. It all depends on the club and the market itself.
Well, and I think you're hitting on a very unique aspect, if you don't mind me suggesting it, of your value proposition as a business. Because the whole marketplace for clinics it's kind of funny in a way in that it's somewhat already commoditized, right? I mean, most of the pickleball pros are incredibly and surprisingly reachable
Yeah.
and available, and so you can they're available for hire. Now it's there's more and more demand, and prices are rising because of an increase in demand. You have the basic economics, and then the pros that are more elite, that are consistently pushing deep into the brackets in every tournament, and they're playing MLP, and they've got other businesses. I mean, they're obviously going to be harder to get in touch with, but you can still get in touch with them. But my point is that getting, a pro is actually quite easy. But what you're talking about is, hey, I'm taking the time to understand the audience and what specifically you're looking for in terms of an experience from this clinic. What are you looking to get out of it? That's a very key thing. And secondly, you're also saying, I'm also curating the pros that I'm going to bring in, and I'm going to bring in the right pro for the right scenario. And this pro, I'm going to guess, is briefed on what the outcomes and the audience that you're coming into. So they're not just coming in cold, but you're bringing in somebody who has a passion for developing the sport. Like you said, Zane isn't looking to charge the highest prices he can get. He has a deep passion to just promote the sport in general. And he knows that more people that come into it and understand the game better and can play the game better, it makes it more sticky, and that's growth for everybody. That's a rising tide lifting all boats scenario. So it's an abundance mindset he has when he's not looking to be purely transactional and extract the most out of each micro transaction that's there. That's wonderful. And so when you get somebody that's like that, and he's demonstrated he's a good coach, just by looking at his content on YouTube. I've consumed a lot of his content teaching things. It's clear to me that you've got a winning formula where you're bringing somebody in who has a passion for the sport, a passion for player development, and they're also becoming dialed in with, okay, this particular club, this clinic that we're going to do, this is the level of the audience, and this is the outcome that they're looking for. I think that's a really neat aspect to your value proposition that if you aren't hammering on that would probably be a good thing to hammer on.
Yeah. No, and absolutely to your point, you can have a top 20 pro on the court, right? Constantly medaling or hitting the quarterfinals, semifinals, et cetera, on the PPA tour, but they may not have that passion for coaching. They may not want to do that. They may do it because there's a payday there, right? In the midst of this growth, but there's quite a bit of administration that goes on prior to the event and after the event. And that's their primary job as pickleball professionals is the PPA/MLP tour, right? If they're on one of those teams, and promoting themselves and elevating themselves on a national scale, both on pickleball TV constantly every weekend. The more people I talk to about the MLP as it's lit on fire here just in the last, few months, if you're really, really a diehard, you're glued to your app or your streaming service to bring you those matches either in real time, or then you go to YouTube that night and take in everything you can. And the matches we just had this past weekend in Dallas were I hate to use the word electric constantly, especially because it supports the Shock, who is a somewhat rival to Zane's Fives. But the matches have been electric, right? You've seen the best pickleball, and you're seeing these matchups that you can't see on the PPA tour. And you
Yeah,
can't
like
see
Will
Ben
Howell's,
face off against ALW on the PPA
right.
tour, right? Because they're always on the same side of the court. They get to go head to head, right? As the Mad Drops play the Fives this past weekend, or you see ALW go against Catherine on the drops, or against Anna Bright on the Shock, and these former partners, going head to head, and the quote unquote bad blood. It's all great for the
And
sport.
you've got the APP that says, Will Howells is the number one player in the world, and here
Yeah,
he is, facing off against Ben Johns, the number one player in the world.
right.
And so, where else do you get to see this but MLP? So but you're right. Some of these matches, I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago. It was just around the men's singles of Jack Sock against Connor Garnett,
Yeah.
and Connor Garnett having those insane comebacks. But that was fantastic. I mean, you've got Jack Sock in literal peak flow state, having fun, hitting crazy shots, just absolutely beautiful, beautiful what he's doing. And then, handing Connor Garnett his ass just to find that Connor Garnett comes and wins both games. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? So there, and I've heard before that the vast majority of pickleball players in the United States don't even know that there's a pro tour yet.
Yeah.
So there's so much evidence that we have in the market that this is early times, right? And so what do you think about starting a business though at this stage? I mean, on one hand, it's great because it's early times
Yeah.
and it's the wild, wild west in many respects, right? There's a lot of white space. I've heard Wes Shaw from John's Design and Consulting, Yola, Racket Pro, talk about how there's a lot of white space in the pickleball industry. And there is. And that's a blessing and a curse because on one hand, it's like, I see all this opportunity. You clearly seeing the gap, the opportunity with clinics to make them more structured and to bring up the quality and to do a focused business that delivers that as a service, with a more predictable outcome. That's fantastic. But once you get into it, you realize it kind of unravels on you. And it's like, it's a bit of a beast, this market, right? Because it isn't defined. I'm part of defining it as a category. And that's where it can be, I think, some days, like you said, before we started the recording of the show, right? Some days you wake up and you feel like you're winning, and other days you don't have that feeling at all.
Yeah.
So talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about the business. What's it like, Chris, in your experience so far, essentially being an investor, a risk taker, an innovator, a leader, a thought leader, an entrepreneur in the industry of pickleball? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's very challenging. Again, nail on the head for you. I liken current pro pickleball to Major League Soccer in the 90s. You go back for those of us old enough to be, at least maybe teenagers or older, in the mid 90s, everyone in the country was playing soccer. Every child had a soccer game or a soccer team that they were playing with on Saturday. And it was an amazing push forward into working with teams and really helping children develop both on and off the field. But Major League Soccer at the time was not anywhere near what it is today, right? You didn't even necessarily have home stadiums built. I believe the Columbus Crew were one of the first teams to create their own home stadium that was built just for that purpose, way back then. But now you look at Major League Soccer and you see it with the broadcast deals, and that we brought these professionals over from overseas to really highlight each team has this head player that maybe is just a bit on the way down, let's say, of their prime after leaving Europe for playing football or South America. And they're coming here to find a renewed vigor and really help promote that league. That's where I see pickleball is so many people, everyone's playing it, but they may not even be aware that pro exists or how they can imbibe that content if it's not physically going to the courts. So to your point, pickleball is in its early days, and that is a blessing and a curse in that what direction do you go? What are those gaps and finding those gaps? And I just found that I sat as a player and thought, I would really like if one of those pros came through Omaha, and they don't do that currently. So I guess I have to go out and make it happen. And I didn't necessarily say, all right, I'm going to make a business out of clinics. I simply started with that one relationship with Zane, that first clinic with Zane, and then found that we meshed well and had very similar ideals as we talked about what he had wanted to do. He was working with pickleball clinics himself in the background for years, setting up clinics with pros. I've gone through his database of former clinics, and it's every top pro that you know of today. I'm not going to name names, but they have all been involved in a clinic that Zane has been involved in over the past 2.5 years, right? During their up and coming rise to where they are today, like top
Which,
five
which
players.
on one hand seems like it was ages ago, and it was
Yeah,
really just a couple years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah, at max. And that's how things have exploded. And certainly you look at the market and you see products and tech, right? You create a product like I believe it was Connor Hance with the Enhanced Pickleball Dink Master wall. I was creating my own in my backyard, taking an old ping pong table and printing out a big map on at Kinko's, taping it up there with targets and trying to hit at it while he was selling a product. and what I believe to be turned, quite a bit of money, just on this one product that nobody else wanted to go build their own wall like I was wanting to do. So great idea. Going the product route or the paddle route, right, just seems like there's an opportunity for the right company. You see these, all the paddle reviewers out there on YouTube. They're making a career out of simply receiving a paddle, playing with it, and telling you what they think. And now, like the pickleball studios, the John Q's, they're building their own equipment to test the actual power that the UPA and USAP are using to test these paddles so that they can use unbiased personal data to provide that service to us.
And you coming from the automotive industry, it's like the JD Power and Associates,
Right.
like this whole industry is emerging, right? This
Yeah.
whole and a lot of them are just sort of like these typical service providers and vendors that start popping up around investments that were made a few years ago. But clearly there's a marketplace forming here. It has formed.
Yeah.
And so it's great. And do you feel sometimes that it's like, well, obviously being an entrepreneur and investing yourself, you feel that time is of the essence. I mean, there's nothing like understanding the value of your time more than when you decide to like put yourself in the front seat of a going concern, of a venture that you're the face of. But do you feel like you're late? Do you feel like you're early? Do you feel like there's a lot of upside ahead? I mean, you must if you're investing in it. But I mean, tell us what your thoughts are in terms of, I guess, are you happy you made the decision to invest in this business, in this marketplace? Are you optimistic about it? Have you, what lessons have you learned so far that you would like to share with other people that might be looking to invest in the industry?
Yeah. I'm very happy. I enjoy waking up and feeling like I get to really put my hands on something and shape it rather than, formally working for other companies or corporations or things like that, where you have your set task and you go out and do it, and that's comfortable. And at times I very much miss that comfortability, right? Of Saturday night, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work necessarily, right? I have those times now. I used to have a mental block of, all right, Monday through Friday is this, Friday through Sunday is this, and they were compartmentalized. And that doesn't exist in the entrepreneur life, right? Not to pat ourselves on the back or glamorize the life, because it's not all that glamorous at times, right? It's brutal, and I wake up more often than not in the middle of the night with an idea or a concern, or I should have done this, or I should already have that done. And I really connected with an article of yours a long time ago before we ever met, where you talked about the impacts of entrepreneurship on your marriage, on your family. And, it puts an immense strain, mainly due to that, due to time, is where do I put my time today? I can come home and I can create my schedule. I'm going to work out from 8 to 9, and I'm going to get on and fire back emails from 9 to 10, and I'm going to do all these things. You can imagine what falls off the table first. It's self-care, right? Didn't get a workout in this morning, jumped right on the computer and started firing off emails and trying to get things moving. At night, there's no easy return to bed. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, two beautiful girls, but they are energy vampires, right? As any parent knows, or even, if you're a fur parent, your children take time away from what you could be doing. And I look back and I'm like, man, I could have spent 4 more hours last night getting this marketing campaign ready to launch, or preparing for PickleCon in Kansas City next month a little bit more, and be more dialed when I'm there. And I guarantee you that when I get there on August 6th and set up for the 7th through the 10th in Kansas City with our booth, I will not be happy with the product I'm putting out on the table. I will work very hard to get there, but I still at that moment in time will not be perfectly content with where I'm at, and will think about all the things I could have done, or what if I had had this here today. And but you can't do that. You have to turn yourself away from that type of thinking and just do everything you can in the moment. Carve out your day. I'm going to focus on this. This is what I need to put forward this day. It's a lot of self-administration. Coming from a project management background helps, but still slaps you in the face about how much more is really involved. I feel it's 10 times harder than I thought it would be. I have to learn 10 new things. You know, if you follow people like Alex Hormozy, it's you constantly find a new barrier or a new foe in what you're doing. It doesn't have to be a competitor, but it's just something you need to learn and accomplish that you don't have currently or innately. And you have to go train yourself on, like going back to school. And then you win that and you are good at that and you've locked that in. And then a new thing comes up even before you're done, right, with the first one. So it's a never-ending battle, but you know, what are we here for otherwise if to just walk through life comfortable? That's not
Right.
where the real wins are.
Right. And the thing that I found with entrepreneurship, I drafted a piece over the weekend because I was wrestling with some of these issues myself, just in the last week, where I talked about in this piece that I drafted just becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that is like the essence of the entrepreneur journey, is like you're putting yourself out there, and it's like constantly uncomfortable. And there's a psychological toll. There's a bit of anxiety with it. There's a bit of like productivity OCD that kind of comes in, and that it can be taxing. And like I don't get into the gym as much as I used to. Not as much time with my wife or kids as before. Not as much time on the court playing
Yeah.
pickleball as I would like, you know. So, but the thing that I found is, if it was easy, then there wouldn't be this opportunity because other people would have filled it already. And so it's a beautiful journey actually. And I find that it's just being centered and calm and understanding that the journey's okay. Like you talk about going to PickleCon and that you're not going to be happy with your marketing presence while you're there. And I totally get that. I mean, so often it's like, if we could just get the next version of the user interface or the new version of the website up, or, oh, wait till I get this out, it's going to change things. And then once you hit the publish button and you look at it, you instantly see everything that's wrong with it. Like, what? And so, yes, now you're mapping out the next iteration.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with to-do lists, right? Like if I could just, here's my big, massive to-do list. If I can just get through all this, and then you get through 80% of it and you're looking at the last 20%, which is probably going to be your lowest priority, lowest impact things. And now it's just totally clear to you about the next giant wave of strategic initiatives and to-do items. And that, you go from feeling like I've conquered a whole bunch of stuff. I've crossed the Rubicon, and here we are now, right? Like I've arrived. I'm in the mecca of things, and it's like, no, actually, you now just have a clearer understanding of the next push
Yeah.
that needs to happen to take your business further. And that in some days, I find for me it's like it's the Monday morning where I can sometimes feel like, okay, gotta breathe here, and it can toy with your mind. The Monday morning psychology of being a founder and an entrepreneur is the funny one, where you're literally having to deliberately pick a lane. Like, am I winning or losing here? And you can't start your week off with this like, oh, I'm not sure's and maybes and am I crazy, and am I really going to be able to achieve these goals? Like, I know I finished off Friday afternoon feeling like I was going to take over the world, but here I am Monday morning and I'm second guessing all this craziness,
Yep.
and that ebb and flow but you have to, that's just part of the journey. It's part of the growing pains, because it's great to be optimistic and visionary and a big believer, the biggest believer in what you're doing. But yeah, you do have to consider like the threats and your
Yeah.
weaknesses,
Yeah.
because that's the stuff you need to be working on and iterating on. Like, yes, you need to build out your strengths, but you also need to be understanding, like, where am I weak, and what are the threats to my business, and how am I going to mitigate, and how am I going to avoid? And so it's not just purely, it's not just dream chasing is, I guess, my point. Business
Oh,
building, it's like you're creating an asset. You've got to have, there's this economic engine that you've got to understand, and you're the creator, you're the Henry Ford of that engine. And then you've got to understand your audiences and have marketing, sales. That's got to connect and just flow. And then once that works, it's all about pushing it and scaling it and making it more efficient. It's a real grind, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah. to put it bluntly, I spend more time thinking about the things I suck at than the things I'm good at. And when it comes to this business and creating marketing materials and all of the AI tools that are out there now, it's like, okay, which one do you study and learn on? Because another one's going to pop up tomorrow that may be exactly what you wanted. And but that's the whole thing, is you just have to do it, right? It's the Gary V mentality of you can't wait until you have your perfect product. You just have to put something out and let it fail or let it float or let it win, right? There's three different ways it can go. And if you never do it, you fail every time, because it doesn't exist. And I don't want to make it sound all bad, right? It's hard, but I'm also Wednesday afternoon, instead of playing pickleball, I'm going to take my daughter to a baseball game. Her kindergarten class is taking a field trip to a baseball game, and I'm going to get to go. I wouldn't be able to do that if I had a traditional 9 to 5 and had already burned up all my vacation time for the year and take those things. So you hope for this perfect work-life balance. You envision entrepreneurship in the dreamer mentality of, I'll get to work when I want. I'll get to do a little few things here in the morning and maybe in the afternoon, and then I'll play pickleball every day because I'm in the pickleball industry, and so it makes sense. To your point, I play much less. I don't know the last rec game I have played in 6 months. Not because I don't want to, not because I don't want to go see those same friends that I've built up those relationships with over the last couple of years. It's that this comes at a cost right now. And that cost, even though it's the thing I love, you take your passion and you make it your job, yeah, your passion may take a hit for me being on the court and playing myself or getting better myself. But you're trading that for the wins of getting to operate and think constantly about a sport or a game or a business that you really love. Even though it's hard, even though, like you said, you get those wins or you get kicked in the pants every other day, or I constantly consider, I do miss some things about the automotive industry. I miss working with some of those specific people or those team environments where you're working toward a goal and you can bounce ideas off of others, that you're not in fear of them taking your idea and running with it on the side before you get a chance to execute, right? That's a very tough thing. And I liked how you talked about earlier about working with other entrepreneurs and trying to rise all boats, is to kind of jump into something else, like with this group, Pickleball Changes Lives, that I've aligned with. Gentleman named Rich and Matt down in South America. We connected on LinkedIn. Richard Walsh is all over LinkedIn, as you know. I know you guys will be speaking soon. And there's just a wealth of people on LinkedIn, all in the pickleball space, all working in parallel, some competition, some not, right? The ability to collaborate on some things and lift everyone up, even with just shared marketing opportunities. But with Pickleball Changes Lives, our intent is to work with brands that are coming out with products, have them send them to us. We provide real world market analysis and feedback about the use of the product and market research, and not sugarcoating it, right? Not send it to me and I'll say it's great on Instagram and we'll move on and I'll sell my promo code. That's not the goal from that type of project. It's they believe in the value that pickleball has changed lives. It's changed mine on a personal level, on a professional level. And we go and say, well, we can really help these companies get true on-court market research in a privatized or public, right? If it's a good review, I'm sure they'll want to go public with it. If it's private, they'll want to take that in-house, tweak their product, and come out with 2.0 that incorporates all that true, legitimate feedback.
I did connect with Richard and Matt actually a week ago, 2 weeks ago, at your recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Yeah. I really love what they're doing. And it's funny that we had our videographer come down to Nicaragua to just shoot some B-roll and do some abstract stuff. We shot a few interviews, and some of those interviews we plan to share with Richard and Matt at Pickleball Changes Lives, because some of the interview content just naturally went into that, about how pickleball has changed their life. Maybe that's a good spot for us to chat on, and then we'll close out the show.
Yeah.
Chris, I think, when you and I talked, we had both experienced how pickleball changed our life. And that was sort of a precursor to us saying, I'm not just passionate on the sport. I'm not just hooked on this. I believe in it so much that I want to invest in it, because there's a level of goodness here that it's what's the right word I'm looking for? It's not just a going into business to make money
Yeah.
and survival and things like this. It's like you're actually somewhere deep inside we believe that we're spreading goodness here actually with this sport. And I don't think we need to elaborate on all the different aspects of it. That's been done already so many times when you look at pickleball content. But tell us about your personal story. You know, you're talking about being at approaching a 4.5 level, right, with your pickleball game.
Yeah.
But you're not getting as much court time lately. You know, where like getting to a 4.5 level is that's a lot of dedication to get there, a lot.
Yeah.
So when did you start playing? How did you mentioned being introduced by this elder lady, which is pretty cool. But how from the period of kind of like getting initially hooked on the sport to I think the mental realization that there was a lot here. You know, can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah. I mean, on an extremely personal level, my first child, my daughter, was born in March of 2020, right? The literal pickup and institution of COVID here, where we're driving to the hospital for her, my wife, to have the baby on empty roads without a car in sight, right? That was what life was like then. Um, Throughout her pregnancy, we were told she was going to have some physical challenges and she was going to be, quite short and even a little person. Um, Throughout that time, you go through, I grew up playing sports every season. My dad cut off his own golf clubs to regrip them, and so I could go golf when I was 7 years old. Um, and then he probably bought brand new ones, but probably to get around my mom. But in that case, right, I just always been a sports fan. My sister played D2 softball, in college and had always played sports, and she was much better than me at every sport for her level all growing up. I attribute that to me being older and really teaching her first. But ultimately, I envisioned a lot of sports for my family and for my daughter and second daughter as well. But when I found out she was going to be quite small, it made me say, okay, what are we going to do differently? How are we going to involve that time? How am I going to spend my time if I had visioned this and it may not be this? Um, Fell across pickleball and I saw Elise Jones running around the court like a madwoman, just doing quite well at the top levels of pro. I make jokes on Instagram about her, and I'm not the only one, clearly, but it's like Elise Jones versus Gravity is a big head-to-head because she's always on the court. She'll give it all, yard sale, full dive just to return one ball.
Full
And
dive and what looks like a skid and everything
yeah,
and get up and it's like nope, no, not a scratch on her. Like what?
yeah, I know. She's superhuman in that regard. But I really saw pickleball then having a tennis background. My wife and I used to play tennis when we had free time before children. My father raised me on ping pong, right? Buying a small ping pong table and having to learn to be very specific with my targets. Um, and I think I lost my dad early on when he was 62 to a little bit of overweight, obesity, and some other health issues. But I feel like pickleball could have really had a huge impact for him. And that got me kind of looking into it. And the fact that the game brings, like you said, I don't want to cover everything about pickleball, but the game brings different ages and athleticism to the middle with its rules and makes it competitive. I saw this as a family game for my wife and our two daughters someday. We'll have a court in our backyard and that will be our activity, right? And I hopefully they'll love it. And I've gotten my 5-year-old, 3-year-old to love it at this point, at least hitting back and forth over my mini net. But I saw that as an opportunity to really get over my hangups about where my daughter might be athletically and then really dove in. And the community that we found when I first moved here to Omaha, I followed my wife in her career. We lived in Southern California and she works for the railroad. It's headquartered here in Omaha. So we came to Omaha. Not exactly where I would have picked. And I spent the first few years traveling Monday through Thursday to stay in the automotive industry while in a town that isn't so automotive. So you can imagine I didn't make a lot of friends because I'd spend my weekends with my wife. Um, it took until I found pickleball, 8 years of living here in Omaha to find my tribe. and my people.
Wow.
Um, to the point that, one of those, now the only game I get to play is maybe a private game on a Wednesday if it's not a lesson that I take. Um, in that private game, I felt I was mentally not there, going through some things personally, and I told the guy who runs that league or that group, I just said, "Hey, I think I'm going to step down. I feel like my play is bringing down the level of the game and hurting my partner, whoever that may be, as we do round robin." And he looked at me and said, "No, you don't get to leave." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "No, not every single person here is here because of their skill on the court." He said, "You're somebody we enjoy playing with, and we want to fill that spot with people we enjoy playing with. That's the point of this private situation that we have here when we schedule these games." And that, to go back to Richard and Matt, that changed my life, right? That had a very deep impact on me, and I found people that not only cared about what I brought to them on a tactical level, but on a friend level, on a human level. And, no matter speaking specifically about the US, my last line is, I don't care if you're far left or far right, this country is divided, and it's in hurt, and it's just painful, and there's so much hate and division. And the game of pickleball is so complementary to your opponent. The paddle taps, the "Hi, my name's Chris, what's your name?" where you've never met these people before, and you're introduced to new generations of people to spend time with that you normally wouldn't. That's my favorite thing, is to play with people 20, 30 years older than me, just to get to talk to them about how they got to where they are. And in 2.5 years, I have not had one political discussion on the court. I guarantee you I'm playing with people of polar opposite political views than I. I know this, I know it for a fact, but I don't know it because we've never talked about it, and we never will. And that is why the game is so important to me, and why I'm pouring myself into it, is I feel like it has the ability to bring people together.
Yeah. Well said. I've experienced that too. For me, I was almost 20 years into my marriage, and my wife and I are like best friends. She just has this, she's so intelligent, and just says some of the funniest things I've ever heard, and she's just got great perspective, and I enjoy her. But we, like, other than like dinner date nights and maybe going for a walk together, we didn't have any activity in almost 2 decades of marriage. We didn't have any activity that we did together. Very different upbringings. And then all of a sudden pickleball, and it's like, she demands that I get out and do drill sessions with her at least once a week. And she's one of my favorite people to do 2-hour focused drill sessions with.
Yeah.
And then that expanded out to my 6 kids too. Like, not all of my kids that I didn't have activities, outdoors, physical activities that I engaged with. So I have 4 daughters and 2 sons. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, every all the kids are into it, and it's something that we all enjoy doing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was magic there. But living in the community where I am in Nicaragua, inside of Rancho Santana, it's a resort community. When they built 3 pickleball courts, that's how I discovered the sport. And I have neighbors in the community that I would bump into all the time. I knew their name, but I didn't know them. There was no real dialogue there other than just pleasantries, being an acquaintance with them. But now all of a sudden it's like you're on this pickleball chat with everybody, and you're like all in and excited, and you're sharing this enthusiasm, the excitement, and you get out, and it's the social, it's the camaraderie, it's the exercise, it's the community. All these things just light up, and there's purpose in that. And especially now that we're entrepreneurs in the industry, there's a much deeper sense of purpose.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that and experience it, but then also to just bump into other people like yourself that have had the same epiphany, if you will, the same realization. So I think that's fascinating to hear. And I know that when we get Palmera stood up with the venue that we're looking to build in Nicaragua, we'll have to figure out some sort of somewhere on the calendar where you're coming down at some point and running a clinic, you know, and whether that's with Zane or somebody else on your team, we'll figure that out. But there's a neat atmosphere here in this country for pickleball. It's taking off organically. It's gone from just being something that the expats are doing to now being something that's just popping up in remote towns and villages across the country. So that's pretty cool. And I think that we're going to just see that trend around the world where there's more player adoption. And with more player adoption is going to be more demand for learning the game and at deeper and deeper levels. But I think the transformational aspects of it are what's fun to be a part of too, right? If we've experienced in our personal lives how it's been transformational in some respects in our relationships and in our community, and that, as you say, it transcends certain divisions, whether that, I mean, when my son and I earlier this year were up doing some PPA tournaments, we would go to different clubs and engage in open play, and absolutely you're interacting with people and having a blast of a time with people that you'd normally never connect with.
No.
And you don't care about any of their other backgrounds and everything. Just pickleball unites. It does. And it's just a really neat experience. So I think that we've experienced it in sort of our own lives, which is a microcosm, I think, of more and more people experiencing that. It becomes transformational on a global scale, which sounds crazy to say that. It sounds like, oh wow, Geoff, you're being super idealistic, and that's a big lofty statement, but it just makes a lot of sense that's very logical. Through logical deduction, that's a very logical step, and we've seen it. You've seen it. A number of us have seen it, and that's part of the reason I believe that we're investing in it, because there's something very deeply human about it, which couldn't come at a better time, because you've got AI coming on the scene and machine intelligence is becoming a big thing in everybody's life. And at times that can feel a bit dehumanizing. So to have something like pickleball that's very humanizing couldn't have come at a better time, in my opinion.
Yeah. The way the game was created and structured, it was made to bring people together, right? And while, yes, everyone who takes a look at it can see that there is an opportunity for capitalism, right, to come in and if you want to be a pickleball entrepreneur and don't care that it's a great game and that it brings people together, you can do that. But I feel like when you come into something like this and have such a passion for it and know that there's a positivity to it, you can weather those kicks in the pants as an entrepreneur just a little bit easier, knowing that there's a somewhat of a bigger picture that you're really trying to contribute to.
Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I'd like to follow your journey as a founder and follow the journey of pickleballpros.com. In closing, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us your ideal customer, your target customer, and how they can get in touch with you. And I think that would be a neat way to just, shamelessly plug your business, have fun doing it. But absolutely, I mean, tell us, how can we support you? How can people out there that are watching this get engaged and support your business and what you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I honestly take that everywhere. Just a couple weeks ago, being at the Beer City Open in Grand Rapids, one of the best MLP Tour stops if you're a fan, if anyone out there is considering traveling to one. Just sitting in the stands, wearing this shirt and cheering Zane on and talking to players, our fans in the stands around me about what I happen to do and get on that conversation. And then other people rows overhearing that and then approaching me after. Our ideal customer is two people. It's a club owner that wants to bring a professional into their club and wants to work with us on creating an event that can provide benefit to their player base, provide awareness to them as a club, and just infuse something fun and provide value back to their market and their community, or a player themselves. And that's how I arrived at two different events that I have locked up since 2 weeks ago was just talking to players in the stands, them finding out, oh, that's really cool. You mean I could play with Zane too? Yeah. And they contacted their facility owners, and their facility owners contacted me. And then we're off to the races. As the biggest challenge I have is cloning Zane, because I've already scheduled him out through the beginning of next year. And we're just in the attempts of trying to find more pros that, to your point, kind of follow our ethos and love coaching and want to be on the court with players and spread the game and promote the pro game. Because as you said, if as long as they promote the pro game, all boats get a little bit more push underneath them, and we can rise the tide. But that's really it. Just contact me at pickleballpros.com, or chris@pickleballpros.com is an email address. And I'm happy to talk through and explore opportunities, both from, events, conferences, sponsorship opportunities with some of these pros, or really just the nitty-gritty clinics and getting back to basics.
Awesome, Chris. Thanks for coming on. In closing, if you've enjoyed this content, hit that subscribe button. We're going to be moving to a more regular show cadence. We're going to be launching a Spanish show as well. But this show is going to take on a little bit more structure, and we're going to have other exciting guests coming on the show. We're going to have other people from Palmera Pickleball coming on and adding different perspectives, different segments to the show. We're going to start covering some news and developments about the industry. And I hope you subscribe and share this, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.